In 2014, a sermon clip went viral. Not because of...
In 2014, millions watched Victoria Osteen stand at the pulpit and say something no Christian leader should ever say, that worship isn't for God, it's for you. But this sermon wasn't a slip of the tongue. It was the latest chapter in a pattern of behavior that quietly shaped one of America's largest churches, and it reveals a problem that goes far deeper than anyone expected. December 2005, Continental Airlines Flight 1602, Houston to Vail, Colorado. Victoria Osteen boards first class with her family, ready for a ski vacation. But what should have been a routine flight quickly turned into a public spectacle. According to witnesses, she noticed a small stain on her armrest and called over flight attendant Sharon Brown, demanding it be cleaned immediately. Brown explained the plane was preparing for takeoff, and she needed to finish safety duties first. Accounts of what happened next vary, but not the outcome. Witnesses claim Victoria became irate, pushed Brown against the bathroom door, and elbowed her in the chest, leaving the attendant with injuries that required medical attention. Victoria's lawyers and Joel Osteen insisted she never made contact, framing her actions as assertiveness. Yet the pilot made a rare decision. The plane returned to the gate, and Victoria Osteen was removed before takeoff. The FAA later fined her $3,000 for interfering with a crew member. Fast forward to 2014. Victoria Osteen stood at the Lakewood Church pulpit, speaking to millions of viewers. Her words were meant to encourage, but they ignited a firestorm. When you worship God, you're not really doing it for Him, she said. You're doing it for yourself because that's what makes God happy. Across social media, theologians and pastors called it heresy. Critics said it was a twisted version of the prosperity gospel, taken to its extreme. Defenders claimed it was taken out of context. But context didn't change the core message. Victoria's philosophy placed human happiness above traditional teachings, turning God into a supporting character in the personal pursuit of joy. Joel Osteen stood beside her, nodding as the words echoed through the megachurch. The clip went viral, not because of Joel, but because it revealed a worldview that many had only suspected, a faith centered on self rather than service. Fast forward to 2014, Victoria Osteen stood at the Lakewood Church pulpit, speaking to millions of viewers. Her words were meant to encourage, but they ignited a firestorm. When you worship God, you're not really doing it for Him, she said. You're doing it for yourself, because that's what makes God happy. Across social media, theologians and pastors called it heresy. Critics said it was a twisted version of the prosperity gospel, taken to its extreme. Defenders claimed it was taken out of context. But context didn't change the core message. Victoria's philosophy placed human happiness above traditional teachings, turning God into a supporting character in the personal pursuit of joy. Joel Osteen stood beside her, nodding as the words echoed through the megachurch. The clip went viral, not because of Joel, but because it revealed a worldview that many had only suspected, a faith centered on self rather than service. When you connect the dots between Flight 1602 and the 2014 sermon, a clear pattern emerges. On the plane, Victoria reportedly demanded immediate compliance, prioritizing her comfort over the safety protocols and well-being of the flight crew. Years later, she told millions of viewers that faith is primarily about personal happiness, placing herself and her own joy at the center of spiritual practice. These moments aren't isolated mistakes. They reveal a worldview consistently focused on self-interest rather than service. Her position at Lakewood amplifies this philosophy. Millions watch, millions donate, and millions internalize the messages she delivers. The church preaches hope and encouragement, yet behind the scenes, decisions about leadership, influence, and accountability are concentrated in one family's hands. The very incidents that drew outrage, airline confrontations, viral sermons, demonstrate what can happen when power is unchecked and theology centers personal satisfaction over humility and responsibility. Lakewood Church isn't a small congregation. It seats 16,000 people on any given Sunday and broadcasts to millions around the world. Victoria Osteen, as co-pastor, helps shape how countless families understand faith, prosperity, and God's will. Her philosophy, centered on personal happiness, reaches far beyond one sermon or one flight incident. It permeates the messages followers hear every week, influencing their spiritual and moral framework without external oversight. Because the church operates non-denominationally, there's no independent body to challenge leadership decisions or theological positions. The board is composed mostly of family members and close allies, meaning there is virtually no accountability outside the Osteen family. Combine this with her public track record, controversial sermons, aggressive behavior on an airplane, and the implications become clear. A single worldview is shaping millions of lives unchecked. Victoria Osteen may be sincere in her beliefs, but sincerity doesn't automatically justify influence. When someone with documented patterns of entitlement, aggressive behavior, and a self-centered theology holds power over millions, it raises questions that go beyond faith. Should leaders be held accountable for how their philosophy impacts others? What mechanisms exist to prevent personal bias from shaping the spiritual lives of followers? In many religious traditions, leaders are subject to checks, boards of elders, denominational oversight, formal training, and ordination processes. At Lakewood, those structures are largely absent. The consequences are clear. Sermons, policies, and public behavior are filtered through a single family's perspective, with little opportunity for correction or evaluation. And when critics raise concerns, they face dismissal rather than investigation. This isn't about vilifying Victoria Osteen personally. It's about leadership and institutional responsibility. What happens when personal comfort outweighs service? When a worldview focused on self-interest becomes the guiding philosophy for millions? And most importantly, who ensures that those in power remain accountable to the people they serve rather than to themselves? Victoria Osteen remains at the pulpit every Sunday, speaking to millions about hope, faith, and God's will. Her messages reach across screens, shaping beliefs, inspiring donations, and influencing spiritual decisions worldwide. Yet behind the smiles and encouragement lies a pattern of behavior that raises serious questions. A worldview that centers on personal happiness, a history of entitlement, and unchecked authority within one of America's largest churches. The airline incident, the viral sermon, the lack of formal accountability, they aren't isolated events. They are connected, forming a portrait of leadership that operates with near total autonomy. And while many defend her intentions, influence at this scale carries responsibility. Millions of lives are shaped by decisions and messages that have never faced independent review. That's the real issue, not whether she is a good person, but whether the system allows personal philosophy to go unchallenged when it touches millions.